It seems like so many heavy players absolutely love to jump rev, and I think this is largely due to many content creators on YouTube touting this mechanic as an easy way to be a little bit more mobile as the slowest class in the game. While jump revving absolutely has its uses, I find that most players are getting killed as a result of improperly using this technique because they are unaware of its downsides. If you didn't know, Heavy's miniguns have a hidden debuff. After first being revved, Sasha suffers from a 50% damage and accuracy penalty, which is reduced over the course of 1 second. So essentially, when you are engaging an opponent, you want to have your gun already revved for at least 1 second before the fight starts. If you jump rev around a corner, you will be negatively impacted by this hidden debuff. This downside is most obvious during a heavy duel. Even if you are healthier than the enemy heavy, if they are spun up and shooting before you, you will typically lose the fight. Jump revving aggressively around corners isn't just a bad idea because of other heavies, however. Heavy is a very health inefficient class. Unlike Scout, who is great at dodging damage, Heavy has almost no chance of avoiding incoming damage when he is spun up. This means that in most fights, you will end up trading damage with your target. Trading damage isn't necessarily a bad thing for you. Heavy is the tankiest class in the game, so if you are able to deal the same damage to your target as your opponent deals to you, you will win that fight versus most classes in the game. And of course, you can simply eat your sandwich to get back into the fight as quickly as possible. That being said, you want to do everything in your power to skew the inevitable damage trade in your favor. I find that when I am playing Heavy, I typically end up having to back up to eat or get healed. This sucks because to do so, I have to forfeit the favorable positioning I have managed to push into. So one way I have become more efficient at staying in the fight longer is to burst my targets down as fast as possible to reduce the amount of time they have to shoot back at me. Thus, reducing your time to kill is extremely important, and by jump revving around a corner, you are neutering your damage potential for that critical first second of the fight. As a result of jump revving, you might take an extra rocket, grenade, or meat shot before you secure the frag, or you might outright die because of your impatience. It is much more advisable to simply rev your gun before you peek the corner. This is true for all of Heavy's miniguns, although the Tomislav suffers the least due to its faster rev time. So if jump revving is so bad, when is it worth doing, if at all? Well, I would like to point out that pretty much all of my favorite Heavy clips I have gotten involve staying revved up almost the whole time. For me, a slow and steady playstyle tends to win the race. Personally, I think most players can improve at Heavy by simply never jump revving again. However, there are times when it is actually worth it. For example, if I am planning the corner peek, I might jump rev towards the corner to save time, but not fully swing the corner until I have been spun up for long enough to avoid the damage and accuracy penalties. This doesn't come without some risk, but it is far less risky than jumping around the corner into the open. Notice how in this clip I have saved a little bit of time by jump revving twice, but I am still applying positioning fundamentals, and as a result I am rewarded with a bunch of kills. Another situation is when I am strategically repositioning during a fight. In this case, you are still hit with the damage penalty, but you are reducing the amount of time you are spun down and vulnerable. A similar example is when you are traversing vertical obstacles, but you wish to reduce the time you are spun down. While jump revving over certain obstacles may be simply a time saver on some maps where you could stay spun up and just walk around the obstacle, in some cases there is no other option but to spin down in order to scale a height. So in these cases, jump revving is actually the best option available to you. One scenario when jump revving is okay is during an Uber, where you are attempting to close the distance between yourself and your targets. Typically, a heavy Uber where you are chasing for frags instead of letting them come to you is an inadvisable Uber, but sometimes a medic will decide to Uber you. It can be in your best interest to chase with the Uber, and since you are impervious, the usual downside of taking more damage as a result of your reduced time to kill is not a factor. Just be aware of your positioning for when the Uber fades. Lastly, jump revving can be used in a similar manner when you aren't Ubered to simply push your advantage or get to a teamfight slightly earlier. Determining when it is appropriate to jump rev and when it is a bad idea is entirely a matter of experience and game sense, and there are plenty of times that you will make a mistake. Generally speaking, the question you must ask yourself is the time I will save by jump revving worth the risk that I am taking? Like I said earlier, I think most heavy players would benefit from just never jump revving at first and then slowly work it into their gameplay to improve their efficiency. Really, the only time when aggressively jump revving works is when you have a pocket medic. This is because you will typically be going damage negative, but having a medic healing you constantly is enough to make up for that. A very aggressive jump rev and heavy playstyle can be effective, but only up to a certain point. When the other team is experienced enough, the tables turn quickly. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that heavy isn't very health efficient. Compared to every other combat class in the game, health is less valuable on heavy. What I mean is that 260 health on a Demoman is superior to 260 health on a heavy, because Demoman is better equipped to deal damage without taking it in return. Because he is much more health efficient than heavy, you will see Demoman getting more heals than a heavy at high levels of competitive play, generally speaking. This is the same story for Scout and Sniper. It is simply more efficient to heal these classes because even though your medigun's healing rate is exactly the same, healing a heavy or a demo or a scout or whatever, it is providing your team more value. Using this scout clip as an example, dealing this much damage while taking almost none in return is simply not possible to do on heavy, at least with any sort of consistency. While I could ramble on and on about heal orders, the value of arrow taking, and whatnot, the point I'm trying to make is that the heavy YouTube pub playstyle is an extremely inefficient and ineffective way of playing the class, and when newer players attempt to emulate it, they typically fall flat on their face and write the heavy class off as weak. Unless you have a medic, then heavy is really good. And heavy relies on having a medic to be useful. This is just not true. Anyways, I want to take a look at a few examples to do a better job of showing exactly what I'm talking about. In this clip, I decide to jump rev backwards to avoid fighting the soldier, pyro, and medic all at once. I think I should have stayed revved up and just held S in order to isolate a 1v1 with the pyro, but I lose because of the rev up damage debuff. In this next clip, I was getting healed a ton this game, so as a result I was happy to be in situations where I would be trading damage. Jump revving around this corner was still a mistake here because I took a bunch of spam from the sentry, but my medic decides to uber me. Of course, once I am ubered, I want to close the distance between myself and vulnerable red players, so I jump rev again. I think if my medic would have held the uber for longer, this would have been a much more clean push, which sort of stems back to that initial jump rev I made the mistake of trying. But because I have heals, this isn't an obvious mistake to spot. In this example, I don't jump rev, but I use a vastly superior method for swinging a corner. I drop down already spun up. This is ideal because I am not hit with the 1 second damage and accuracy debuff. These next few clips I want to show off an effective alternative to corner peeking into the other team. Holding a weird off angle where you expect the other team to push past you is a great way to get some cheesy frags. Now, this can backfire on you pretty badly because if you're hiding in a corner and the other team actually clears that corner, you're in trouble. So, the Tomislav is probably preferred over stock because of its silent rev, but as you can hopefully tell, it is not a requirement. Anyways, that is all for today. Thank you for watching.
Get out of the way, Pyro!